If you want the Attorney General to come, at least let him answer the questions and the accusations made against him.
The gentleman's rudeness is not recognized.
Rudeness?
Rudeness is on the other side.
Mr. Stanton,
time after time, you refuse to let the Attorney General of the United States answer the questions.
I'd like to know from you, how many of these March block sales were investigated?
I sent out a directive that we should start prosecuting to the extent we can these lie and try cases. Previously, we hadn't really been pursuing them.
Okay, so I take that as a no. I just have one
no,
more
well, I'm saying we are pursuing those cases.
My time is up. I take that as a no. Unfortunately, this fits a larger pattern of your administration neglecting the health and safety of Americans. From health care to gun violence, this administration is failing to keep my constituents and people all over the country healthy and safe. I demand better. Americans demand better. I want you to provide the answers that you are either unwilling to provide us or don't have answers to this committee, because these are relevant questions and we need to have answers from you. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. John, I got a question.
For what purpose does the gentleman seek?
For months, you've tried to get the Attorney General to come. He's here. Why don't you let him speak? Why don't you let him answer the questions?
The gentleman is not.
Time after time. If you want the Attorney General to come, at least let him answer the questions and the accusations made against him.
The gentleman's rudeness is not recognized.
Rudeness?
Rudeness is on the other side.
Mr. Stanton,
time after time, you refuse to let the Attorney General of the United States answer the questions posed to him.
Mr. Stanton is recognized.
Well, maybe the last few witnesses will actually let the Attorney General speak.
Mr. Attorney General, if in this upcoming November election, the President asks you to intervene and try to stop states from counting legal ballots after Election Day, will you do the right thing and refuse? Yes or no?
I will follow the law.
You won't say no, sir?
I'll follow the law.
It's very disappointing.
If a state has a law that says it has to be cast on Election Day, that's the law.
Will you commit to making sure the Department of Justice does not get involved in a contested election? Yes or no?
I will follow the law.
It is so disappointing that we can't get a clear answer on that. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to submit for the record the following items. An item from The Guardian magazine, an embarrassment. Trump's Justice Department goes quiet on voting rights. Second, New York Times magazine, William Barr's state of emergency. Finally, from the Washington Post, Trump's assault on the election integrity forces question, what would happen if he refused to accept the loss?
Without objection, the material will be based.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record.
Without objection.
A member of the Judiciary Committee, following the law.
Without objection.
Following the law should be something a member of the Judiciary Committee knows.
The gentleman
is pretty darn clear.
The gentleman will suspend. Without objection, the material will be entered into the record. Ms. Dean is recognized.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, could we take a 5-minute break?
Dean is recognized.
Could we take a 5-minute break, Mr. Chairman?
No.
That's a common courtesy, Mr. Chairman, of every witness.
I waited an hour for you this morning. I haven't had lunch. I'd like to take a 5-minute break.
Mr. Attorney General, we are almost finished. We're going to be finished in a few minutes. Otherwise, we can certainly take a break. But
You're clapping.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, after this, if you still want, we'll have a break.
No, he wants a break now.
You want it now?
And you just mentioned rudeness. I think we're seeing it on display. Let's let the Attorney General have a break.
The committee will stand in recess now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. I have two questions. You said that the president was talking about wearing a mask improperly last night, touching it, referring to what Dr. Fauci has said. But he said, quote, there are people that don't think masks are good. That's clearly not what the CDC director thinks, since he said today that masks are important, powerful public health tool we have. They could be even more protective against COVID than a vaccine. So have any medical experts told the president that masks aren't good, or is he only citing non-medical experts like he did last night?
He's referring to the fact that when used appropriately, they can have unintended consequences, much like what Dr. Fauci said. It's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is, and oftentimes there are unintended consequences. So the president agrees with Dr. Fauci that mask wearing is good. It's recommended. The president's continually recommended it from this podium, but he was just pointing out some of the unintended consequences if not used appropriately.
He didn't say that. He just said there are people
no,
that
he
think
did.
masks
Go on.
aren't.
Do you have his whole exchange? Would you like to read it out?
I watched it last night.
He went and talked about.
Don't think masks are good. He didn't say improperly or anything like that.
He went on in the unfortunately, a bunch of you are very keen on doing selective editing of the president's quotes and not referring to the second half. Directly under that statement, he talked about a waiter touching the mask, then touching a plate, and that being an unintended effect of wearing a mask. That is an example of a mask not being used appropriately.
Waiters don't think masks are good. But
And he described the exact scenario in which a mask could have an unintended consequence if not used appropriately. And we can send you the clip. We'll put it up on Twitter for you.
It's okay. I just wanted to see if there's any medical experts who have said that.
And they have, and I just read Dr. Fauci's quote. So go ahead.
Yes, I've read Dr. Fauci's quotes. On the health care plan, the chief of staff said today that there is going to be one unveiled before the election, one that the president has been promising for over a year now, long before then. But today on Capitol Hill, the 3 top medical experts in this administration said they have no idea of any kind of plan that's being formulated. So who is it that is working on the health care plan that's going to be introduced before the election?
So here at the White House, we have a wide array of people working on it. There have been elements of it that have already come out, like the telemedicine plan, the drug importation EO, the most favored nations were elements of what is an overarching plan. There's more that will be forthcoming. And in aggregate, it's going to be a very comprehensive strategy, one where we're saving healthcare while Democrats are trying to take healthcare away, where we're making healthcare better and cheaper, guaranteeing protections for people with pre-existing conditions, stopping surprise medical billing, increasing transparency, defending the right to keep your doctor in your plan, fighting lobbyists and special interests, and making healthier and finding cures to diseases. And those are the principles that will animate multiple stakeholders here at the White House who work on policies. So our domestic policy council and others are working on a health care plan.
Not the CDC director, not Bob Kadlec, not Admiral Jouar. None of them have any idea about the health care plan.
I'm not going to give you a readout of what our health care plan looks like and who's working on it. If you want to know, come work here at the White House. Yes.
So I just wanted to know who's working on it.
Yes. Stakeholders here in the White House. And as I told you, our Domestic Policy Council and others in the White House are working on a health care plan, the president's vision for the next 5 years. And yes, and if you want more, come join us here. Yes.
That's not the point why I asked the question.
Yes.
I think you know that.
Okay, I've called on you 4 times. So who are
set of tools in the toolbox on COVID, developing vaccine manufacturing capacity in Africa, where they're importing 99% of vaccines. DFC has just announced a big deal with J&J in South Africa with other international financing bodies. So again, multilateralizing what we do. And that's going to bring more than 500 million doses online coming from South Africa by the end of 2022. I think that's just the beginning. And certainly my impression, and as the vice chair of the DFC, my impression is that is very much the orientation of the leadership of DFC to meet these needs in developing countries, recognizing that is going to be profitable for everybody over time.
Thank you. Senator Paul.
Good morning. Are you aware of how much revenue the federal government brings in?
Probably order of magnitude, but not the specific.
It's about $3.8 trillion estimated for this year. Last year, about $3.7 trillion. But we're spending, close to $7 trillion maybe this year, a little over $6 trillion last year. So the deficit was of historic proportions last year, over $3 trillion. It'll be again $3 trillion or more by the time the majority party weighs in. Amidst that massive deficit, do you think that debts matter? Do you think it matters how big a deficit we have?
If I can state to my area of expertise, which is how we spend the money that you're generous enough to appropriate, I'm probably on safer ground. I have my views as a citizen, but I'm here in my capacity as aid administrator.
All right. The thing is that we probably do need people in government who do understand a little bit about finances. I mean, you're asking for a 15% increase in the welfare that we give to other countries. And really, I think it's irresponsible. It's the wrong thing we should be doing. We should be conserving our resources, particularly conserving them for our country as opposed to sending them to other countries. There's not a great deal of evidence that the money that we, launder throughout the world really over time has been a benefit to us. There's a great deal of evidence that much of it's been stolen. We mentioned corruption. Well, yeah, there's plenty of corruption, and often the government-to-government money has been stolen through the years. But some of it's spent on things that are just, if the American people knew about them, would be outraged. Some of the aid money went to, spreading green growth in Peru, some sort of climate alarmism, selling Serbian cheese, venture capital fund in Bosnia, small business loans to people who've been deported, dealing with truant Filipino youths. In Afghanistan, we spent $60 million on a hotel that was never completed. It was a shell of a hotel across from our embassy. It became such a danger that our troops had to patrol it, and ultimately will have to be raised. If it hasn't been so already, they'll probably need more money to raise it. After we gave somebody $60 million, the contractor ran off with the money. The people who want global climate alarmism to spread through both aid and our defense budget built a $45 million natural gas station in Afghanistan. First problem was it was supposed to cost $800,000, and then in the ever lack of efficiency of government, it ended up costing $45 million when initial estimates were $800,000. That was the first problem. The second problem is the average Afghani makes about $800 a year, doesn't have a regular car, much less a car that runs on natural gas. So the thing is that if you look at the history of the welfare that we distribute around the world, you really see a history of both sending it to corrupt nations. If you look at the money sent to the Mubarak family, to Egypt, I think it's $1.5 trillion, $1.5 billion a year, but over like a 30-year period, I think it was 40 some odd billion. Well, Mubarak's kids were each worth about $5 billion. Mubarak himself became worth about $10 billion. And I don't think anybody argues that some of that wasn't getting by taking the cream off the top as our aid came in. But that's the history of it throughout Africa, throughout all of these nations, of people skimming off the top. But it's insulting to Americans. We're running a $3 trillion debt, and it does have ramifications. What we're seeing is inflation throughout the economy right now. It's an insidious tax. It hurts the poor the worst. It's a regressive tax, and we're going to see more of it. But it comes from people who don't seem to have an opinion about debt, who just seem to just go along their way and say, oh, I'm going to help people. I call it the big heart, small brain syndrome. Give everybody money. Give everybody free money. Give the world free money. Because we have a big heart and we want to help people, but we don't see really the ramifications of what the debt's doing to our country, what it'll ultimately do. If you want to see the unraveling of it, look at Venezuela. That's what our future will look like if we consider to not be concerned about debt. So my admonition to you is you should care about the debt, and that you should be aware of the debt in coming forward with a budget that asks us to increase by 15% when we'll have a deficit of over $3 trillion this year.
Thank you, Senator. I don't have much time to respond, but I'd be grateful just to say a couple things. First of all, I've made multiple endeavors to come and see you. I would love to talk about the programs that you have concerns about. I actually think when I had the privilege of serving the Obama administration, there were a number of issues related to assistance to particular governments where you and I had a meeting of the minds, if I recall, unless I'm misremembering. But on the broader sort of view of foreign aid, I just think it's really important to disaggregate what we're talking about and to dig into particular programs. And that's why one of my priorities as administrator is to enhance the rigor of our evaluations, to be accountable, to look at some of the programs maybe on your list. Maybe they should be stopped, or maybe they should never have started, and maybe we can learn from them. But if the pandemic has not taught us how connected the health and safety of Americans is to people who live around the world, I do not know what will. We are connected. And if we do not invest in global health systems internationally, it is going to be the American people that pay the price.
Nobody's arguing we're not connected. It's just whether we have to pay for everything.
Well, would you? And so you want the Chinese then to pay and to exact their leverage in that manner? You want someone to do it, but we're to be the freeloader on a Chinese-led world order? I'm not for that.
Thank you.